I am a 20-year-old female from New York, and at the time this story took place I was 10 years old and living in a suburban area about an hour outside of New York City. I lived in a small community in which everyone knew everyone. My experience took place in 2006 on October 31st, Halloween. The reason I'm sharing the year with you is so you can understand why we didn't just call for help on our cell phones. We just didn't have them at our age. Cue 90s kids superiority complex. But you can bet we got them after this. Well, my friends and I were going around knocking on neighborhood doors to get candy, and we had been fairly successful. This spurred us to go on a little further in our neighborhood than we had in previous years, and we had lost track of time, putting the time at about 4 p.m. Around the time our bags were getting heavy, and we were considering going back, my friend noticed a truck that was idling at the end of the street we were on. This may not sound too weird, but there was no one in the neighborhood that owned a truck like that. We decided to hit the remaining house on the block and start heading to my house as soon as possible, while keeping an eye on the truck. While we were heading up the driveway of the last house, I decided to keep an eye on the truck. It hadn't moved from its spot at the end of the block, but it still gave me an odd feeling. As soon as we got our candy, we started the 1.5-mile walk back to my house. There were 2 routes we could take. A shortcut through a wooded trail or a road that was mostly residential, but also had some small commercial buildings. Being 10-year-old girls, we chose to take the mostly lit road over the dark trail in the woods. The trip was peaceful until I noticed the truck was following us. I got a cold feeling down my spine. I just knew something was wrong with the truck. It was grey with one headlight out, and rust along the metal accents of the wheels and doors. To my 10-year-old self, it just looked like bad news. I informed my 3 friends and we decided to walk faster. Unfortunately, as soon as we sped up, so did the truck. We had about a half-mile to go and we all decided to run to a store down the road to get help. We ran and the truck sped up, apparently realizing what we had planned to do. My heart was beating 1,000,000 times an hour, and adrenaline made me run faster than I ever had before. The truck cut us off, braking quickly to come to a stop in front of us. We quickly turned and ran across someone's lawn, making it to the back of the convenience store. We ran through the unlocked back door and to the cashier. We quickly and out of breath told him what was going on and asked him to please let us use the phone to call our parents, but to our horror, instead of helping us, he started yelling at us to go bother someone else, and that he had no time for our childish games. We were shocked. We had never been treated like this by an adult, and had no idea why this man wasn't helping us. My friend Sarah tried convincing him to at least call the police, hoping that would prove to him that we were serious and not playing a prank. He still refused to help us, and forcefully led us out of his convenience store. At this point, my friend Sam was crying and I wasn't far behind. I was terrified to look at the road, for fear of seeing the truck. Then Sarah yelled at us to run and I looked up. The truck was at the exit of the convenience store's parking lot, just sitting there. We ran for our lives, the truck never far behind. Every time the truck would get too close to us, we would duck into another block or over someone's fence to get to another street. The only reason we were able to stay ahead of the truck was our knowledge of the roads. This person was obviously not familiar with the layout of the neighborhood. When we were about 2 blocks away from my house, we made a daring move that bought us some time. We decided to go down a dead-end street that had a small path leading to a nearby street, only a small distance from my block, and use that path to hide in after the truck would get stuck at the end of the dead end. The troubling part was that we didn't know whether or not the driver of the truck would follow us by foot into the woods. We decided to risk it. We ran down the road and onto the path, far enough that we could still see whether the driver followed by foot. The woods provided enough cover to hide us from the driver's sight. We split up, just far enough to provide better cover, and waited for the driver to make a move. While the truck idled at the entrance to the woods, I decided to climb a tree, to feel safer and to become less visible. We waited for what felt like forever, until the driver's door opened, revealing a middle-aged Caucasian man with long, greasy hair. And what I now know was a boner. He was getting himself off by chasing 10-year-old girls. I don't want to think about what would have happened if he had caught us, but I have a pretty good idea of what would have happened. Nevertheless, he stalked us into the woods and started looking for us. If you don't know what being hunted feels like, I hope you never do. You feel weak, helpless, and absolutely outmatched. The man was getting too close to Christina's hiding spot for my liking, so I did the only thing I could think of. I took a Mars bar and hurled it in the opposite direction of all of our spots. As soon as the bar hit the trees, I made a small crunching sound. The man whirled around and stalked in that direction. I quietly made my way down from the tree and made my way over to Sam. Sam and I made our way over to Sarah and Christina, who had hid close together. We quietly decided to make a run for the end of the path, while the man was quite a ways down the path, closer to where we had entered the woods. On the count of 3, we ran. We ran without looking back, but we could hear his footsteps on the trail behind us. We could see the street ahead and we raced further. We made it onto the street and down towards my block. As soon as we were on my block, we rushed to my door, banging on it to be let in. My father opened the door, surprised to see us covered in dirt, sweat, and tears. We told him what had happened, and when we were done talking, he instantly got his rifle and went outside. The man was nowhere to be seen, but we told him where he had left his truck, and he told us to stay inside with my mother. My mother called the cops and made us comfortable in the living room. My mom also called my other friend's parents. After that, the cops arrived shortly. We gave the cops our statement, and 2 cops went off to find my dad. The cops decided to check out the area and make sure the man wasn't lurking around somewhere. It was 3 hours later when we found out what had happened for my dad. Apparently, the man was trying to start his shitty truck when my dad arrived, prompting my dad to hold the man at gunpoint until the cops arrived. After the cops came and took the man into custody, after telling my dad that the man was a registered sex offender, my dad went to the convenience store where we had begged for help, and apparently gave the guy a piece of his mind for not helping a group of young girls in distress. It has been 10 years since that night, and needless to say, I never went trick-or-treating without an adult again, and I never stayed out more than 2 hours. I just can't bring myself to feel enthused over Halloween anymore. I hope that creep got a long time in jail, and I hope he never does this to any girl in the future. I realize that I should provide articles for proof, but I just can't bring myself to look anything up about him. I never want to see his face again. I apologize for any inconvenience this may cause. In 2007, I was 20 years old and lived with my girlfriend. Neither of us had a vehicle at the time, so when we got into an argument one night, I left and started walking the 8 miles to my mom's house, to give things a chance to settle down. This was around 1 a.m. As I am walking, a small goldish car pulls up beside me and the driver, a middle-aged black man with a slight speech impediment, asked me if I need a ride, which I declined. He asked me if I was sure several times, and I said yes, but thanked him. He drove off. For the next couple miles, he was idling at every major intersection, sometimes honking his horn at me slightly. Every time I noticed him, I made a conscious effort not to look at him again or invite any more of his attention. I thought he had gotten tired of messing with me until I walked in front of a small used car dealership. I heard someone say, "Hey, come here," from the parking lot. It was him again. I stopped, obviously startled, and he tries to calm me down. "Whoa, chill, dog. Hey, man. You sure you don't need a ride? I'm not busy at all, and I really don't mind." I again decline, and he starts asking me questions left and right. I talk to him for a good 4 to 5 minutes or so, hoping it'd make him leave me alone before I go on to a less busy street. He asked me what my name was several times, as if to check if I have given him a fake one. I did, but I lied consistently. He also kept asking me if I had any weapons on me, or if I was violent. I told him no, which was probably stupid. He then started trying to get me to step closer so he didn't have to yell to talk to me. Nope. Finally, I tell him I need to keep walking. He again offers me a ride. Is again rejected, then says, "Look, man, I'm really just trying to get some weed." What the fuck? Given his behavior and the circumstances, that seemed very unlikely. I walked off and crossed the street and zigzagged through some shopping centers to lose him. If I did, it was only temporarily. At this point I was confused, slightly freaked out, and mildly paranoid. But what happened next really freaked me out. An hour or so later, I was on a quiet street, almost to my mom's house. Psst. I look to my right, and I see a chubby but attractive Hispanic woman, smiling real big, and waving me in to approach her. She was in a driveway of a yard full of plants. A man-made jungle type thing. Can't see a lot of the yard from the street. She did not live there. "Yeah? What's up?" I asked her, not moving forward at all. "Hey baby, wanna come home?" "No thanks," I told her. "Oh, you have a girlfriend?" "I just don't know you," I say, then continue walking. I honestly thought at the time that this was a setup for a robbery or something, but it appeared she was alone, and there was no one else in the truck. I glanced back towards her, and she's now got her truck open like she's going to leave. But the back of her shorts are pulled down, and her ass fully exposed, and staring up at the sky like a lunatic. "Are you alright?" I asked. I was genuinely concerned. "Yes, I'm just waiting for someone." Waiting for someone in the sky at 2:30 a.m. in a stranger's driveway, hidden from view of the street. "'Kay, good luck, weirdo." She had to be on something. I keep walking. She backs out her truck and drives past me. As she does, I see there was someone else in the truck the whole time. Must have been hiding for some reason. It was a black dude from earlier. Staring, eyes like daggers, no smile or anything this time. I get chills even now thinking about realizing for the first time that this guy really wanted me for something, and I probably almost became a victim of some major crime. Shortly thereafter, I made it to my mom's. 5 freaking years pass. It's 2012. I have a car but decide to walk to Walmart for dog food. I'm in the same general area with my iPad mini in my pocket and earbuds. I see a car pull up next to me in the parking lot. "Hey dog, do you know how to get to Landmark's apartments?" I recognized him immediately, even after 5 years. He looks like a skinnier version of Fleece Johnson from MSNBC's Lockup. I'm almost positive he didn't recognize me or remember our previous encounter. I take out my iPad, connect to Wi-Fi and try to look up this apartment complex. It did not exist. He volunteers that his name is Carlton. I start telling him where he might want to check, but he's not interested. He starts asking me questions. Again, asks my name several times, asks if I'm armed or violent, asks me to step closer so he doesn't have to yell. How often does he do this shit, for fuck's sake? You going to Walmart? I can take you there. No thanks, guy. He keeps trying to get me into the car and asking if I have weapons. Finally, I make it clear I'm not going near him. He starts to pull off and then stops immediately. Look man, to be honest with you, I'm just trying to find some weed. Okay, no, screw this. I jog to Walmart. Send an MMS message to my girlfriend of his car and license plate, in case I turn up dead somehow. And haven't seen him since. If he was doing this kind of thing for at least 5 years, he had to have been successful at some point. I personally hope he was just gay and horny. But he gave off a serial killer vibe. This encounter happened to me a number of years ago. When I was 19, I decided to take off on a cross-country adventure, following my favorite rock band, 9 Inch Nails, across America. The tour I chose to follow, as in attend every show back-to-back for nearly 30 consecutive shows, was playing arenas in secondary markets. So the towns I was traveling to were places like Moline, Illinois, Grand Rapids, Michigan, and other smaller cities. I didn't have much money saved up, so I mostly slept on sidewalks in a sleeping bag outside the venues, instead of getting hotels. Plus, sleeping outside ensured I was first in line for GA entry, which was important to me as I'm a tiny female and don't do well in mosh pits unless I have a rail spot. Mostly, I was able to safely sleep in parking lots and sidewalks with no problem. Unfortunately, the tour was during the winter, so I got snowed on a lot, and it was balls cold. People at the concerts were friendly and fed me. The opening bands did too, as they began to recognize me. Occasionally I was lucky enough to get an invite to a hotel room for some sleep, although I did sleep well on sidewalks too. I had a companion with me, a girl from New York City who I met online on the 9 Inch Nails fan message boards. She travelled in my beat-up geo-tracker with me to shows, although she never helped with driving because she didn't have a license. My car was beat up and a convertible, so it wasn't warm to sleep in due to air leakage. So that's why I preferred to sleep outside on the ground. Oddly, it was warmer than inside the car. I couldn't idle in the car with the engine on because it wasted gas money, and I was dead broke. So my story begins as I'm driving along the southern part of the I-10 from NOLA to a show in Dallas, Texas. My friend and I had pulled over along a fairly deserted stretch of highway near the Big Thicket, Louisiana, East Texas border. It was swampland around there, as you imagine a swamp to be. Thick plant growth, dense foliage, little huts here and there. Lots of low-lying shallow water. It was night when I pulled over, exhausted from driving. My friend and I found an isolated gas station along the highway and parked in the accompanying lot, counting on the parking lights in the lot to remain on all night and the store to remain open. We figured it was safe to assume a gas station that remote would stay open 24/7 as people couldn't refuel anywhere else. And we wanted to be near light and other humans since the rest of the swamp was dark and creepy and deserted. My friend and I fell asleep. I was worried because the car was a convertible and the back part of the canvas had a top which would allow someone to easily crawl into the back seat or cut their way in to harm us. I felt uneasy falling asleep, like I was being watched. But I wrote it off to paranoia, and was so tired I eventually fell asleep anyways. A while later I awoke with a start. It was pitch black outside, save for the moon's light. The parking lot lights had been switched off. Gas station was abandoned. We were the only car in the lot. But all this was secondary to my fucking terror, as I saw a hunched over, crazy looking old man creeping in the dark towards my car. He looked caked in mud, with a balding scalp that looked like it was covered in sores. His clothes were old and ripped, and he was crouched down, scuttling towards my car. I made eye contact with him as he was moving forward, and he paused briefly, staring at me, and smiled. His hands were limply hanging by his side. My friend was still snoring next to me. I was frozen in utter terror for an instant. Then I scrambled for my keys, jammed them in the ignition, and threw the car in reverse, peeling out. My friend got jolted awake, hitting her head on the side passenger door. She immediately saw the guy as he stood upright and raced towards our now moving car, screaming at the top of his lungs, lunging forward, trying to throw himself on the hood. I threw the car into drive and got the fuck out of there. Needless to say, we drove non-stop to the next venue and didn't stop to sleep in the car ever again. We instead would drive all night and sleep during the day, on the pavement, in front of the venues, which proved to be much, much safer. So, Creeper Dude, let's not meet again. Hey guys, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for watching episode 29. I'd also like to thank you all for helping me reach 3,000 subscribers. I hit that target a little bit earlier than I thought, so it was a very pleasant surprise when I woke up the other day and saw that I'd hit it. Right now 4,000 seems very far away, but I'll just keep plugging away at it, uploading stories, and I'm sure I'll get there eventually. No rush. I'm still not sure what I'm doing for Friday's video yet, but I'm thinking at the moment I might do my first subscriber stories video. I was going to wait till I had about 10 or so, but I'm thinking I might just stick to 3. 3 seems to be my magic number when it comes to videos. So, with any luck, Friday should be 3 subscriber stories, episode 1. I'm doing them in the order I've received them, so if you have sent me a story in and it's not in Friday's video, please don't think I'm not going to use it. I'm definitely going to use it. It will just be in the next video or possibly the video after that. So until next time, thank you very much and take good care of yourselves.